The wrench slipped from Marcus Webb's oil-stained fingers as he heard his daughter's voice crack through the phone. "Dad, they're saying I can't graduate unless we pay the fees by Friday. It's $800. Marcus closed his eyes, standing in the cramped garage bay where he'd worked double shifts for the past 3 years. $800 might as well have been $8,000. Between Emma's school expenses, the rent on their tiny apartment, and keeping food on the table, there was nothing left. There was never anything left. "We'll figure it out, sweetheart," he said, forcing brightness into his voice. "We always do." But as he hung up, Marcus felt the familiar weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. 3 years since his wife Sarah had died, and he still felt like he was drowning, paddling furiously just to keep Emma's head above water while his own went under again and again. The October rain had started early that evening, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon. Marcus was supposed to clock out at 6, but Jerry, his boss, had already gone home, leaving him to close up alone. He was pulling down the garage door when he heard it, a car engine sputtering, coughing, then dying with a pitiful whine. An old Mercedes, maybe from the 90s, rolled to a stop just outside the garage. Even through the rain, Marcus could see it was a beautiful car once, the kind that spoke of better days now long past. The door opened, and an elderly man stepped out, his expensive but worn suit immediately soaked by the downpour. Marcus should have kept walking. He was exhausted, worried sick about Emma, and it was well past closing time. Jerry would be furious if he knew Marcus was doing work off the clock. But something in the old man's face, a mixture of dignity and desperation, stopped him. "Got some trouble?" Marcus called out, jogging over. The old man looked up, rain streaming down his weathered face. He must have been in his 80s, with silver hair and eyes that held storms of their own. "I'm afraid so. The engine just gave out. I have an important appointment across town, and He paused, seeming embarrassed. "I don't suppose you could take a look. I can pay." Marcus saw the way the man's hand trembled as he reached for his wallet, the way his clothes, though quality, had been mended in places. He recognized poverty dressed in dignity. He'd seen it in his own mirror often enough. "Don't worry about payment right now," Marcus said, already popping the hood. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The old man introduced himself as William Rothschild as Marcus worked. "I've had this car for 30 years, William said softly. "Bought it when my company went public. Drove my wife to the hospital in it when our son was born. Drove her," his voice caught, "drove her to her final rest in it too." Marcus understood that kind of grief. He worked in silence, his experienced hands moving through the engine, diagnosing, adjusting. The problem was more serious than he'd hoped: a fuel pump on its last legs, corroded wiring, a dozen small failures that came from a car that was loved but not properly maintained for lack of money. "I can get you running tonight," Marcus said finally, "but you're going to need some real work soon. This fuel pump is held together by prayers and rust. Can you fix it?" "Everything, I mean?" William asked. Marcus calculated quickly. Parts, labor, time. It'd run about $1,200 in a shop like this. I could maybe find used parts, get it down to $800 or $900. The same amount as Emma's graduation fees. The irony wasn't lost on him. William's face fell. "I see. Well, if you can just get me running for tonight." As Marcus worked, replacing what he could, jury-rigging what he couldn't, they talked. William told him about his life, how he'd built a software company from nothing in the 70s, how he'd been one of the pioneers of database management systems, how he'd made millions and then lost most of it in bad investments and a business partner's betrayal. His son had died young, an aneurysm at 40. His grandchildren barely spoke to him, too busy with their own lives. "I have one important meeting tonight," William said. "My lawyers finally found a way to reclaim some of what was stolen from me. After 3 years of litigation, tonight I sign the papers that give me back my company. Or what's left of it." Marcus listened, his hands never stopping. He understood what it was to fight for years just to keep your head up. He told William about Emma, about Sarah's cancer, about the medical bills that had swallowed their savings, their home, their future. About working 70-hour weeks and still falling short. About his daughter who wanted to be a doctor and had the grades for it but might not even graduate high school because her father couldn't scrape together $800. "She's brilliant," Marcus said, pride evident even through his exhaustion. "Straight A's, volunteers at the hospital, tutors other kids for free. She's everything I'm not, everything her mother was." "You're wrong about that," William said quietly. You're out here in the rain, past closing time, helping a stranger for no money. Most people would have driven past. Your daughter learned that kindness somewhere. 2 hours later, Marcus had the Mercedes running. It wasn't pretty, and it wouldn't last long, but it would get William to his meeting. He refused payment 3 times, and only accepted $40 when William pressed it into his hand with tears in his eyes. Thank you, William said, gripping Marcus's hand with surprising strength. You've given me back more than a car tonight. You've reminded me that good people still exist. Marcus watched the taillights disappear into the rain, then trudged to his own battered truck. He was 3 hours late, soaked to the bone, and still had no idea how to get Emma her graduation money. But somehow, he felt lighter. He stopped at the all-night diner where Emma worked weekends, just to see her face. She was wiping down tables, her smile for the customers never quite reaching her eyes. When she saw him, though, it blazed to life. Dad, what are you doing here? Can't a father visit his daughter? They sat in a booth, sharing fries and coffee. Emma talked about her dreams, about the colleges she'd applied to, about the scholarship interviews coming up. She didn't mention the graduation fees. She was protecting him, just like he tried to protect her, both of them carrying weights they hid from each other. We're going to be okay, Marcus told her, meaning it, needing to mean it. I know, Dad, she said, and her faith in him was both beautiful and heartbreaking. That night, in his apartment, Marcus counted out his money. He had enough for rent or Emma's fees, not both. He chose Emma's fees. He'd deal with the landlord somehow. He always did. He was asleep when his phone rang at 2 in the morning. A number he didn't recognize. Marcus Webb, a crisp female voice asked. Speaking. This is Catherine Morris, attorney at Morris, Henderson, and Cho. I represent William Rothschild. I'm sorry to call so late, but Mr. Rothschild insisted. Are you able to come to our offices tomorrow morning at 9? Marcus's heart sank. Jerry had told him once about a mechanic who'd gotten sued for working off the books. Is there a problem with the car repair? No problem, Mr. Rothschild would simply like to see you. Please, Mr. Webb, it's important. He almost said no. He had a shift at 9. But, something in her voice made him agree. The law offices were in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building Marcus usually only saw from the outside. He felt out of place in his worn work jacket and jeans, surrounded by people in suits worth more than his truck. Catherine Morris met him in the lobby, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. This way, please. She led him to a conference room where William sat at a vast table, flanked by lawyers and documents. But the old man's face lit up when Marcus entered. Marcus, thank you for coming, Mr. Rothschild. I don't understand. Sit, please. William gestured to a chair. When Marcus sat, William slid a folder across the table. Last night, after you fixed my car, I made it to my meeting. After 3 years, I got my company back. What's left of it, anyway, about $40 million in assets, intellectual property, and ongoing contracts. Marcus's head spun. 40 million, he couldn't even imagine that number. I spent the rest of the night thinking, William continued, about my life, my choices, my legacy. My son is gone. My grandchildren have their own money, their own lives. They don't need mine. But you know what I realized? I've spent 3 years fighting to get back what I built, but I forgot why I built it in the first place. To help people, to make something that mattered. He pushed the folder closer to Marcus. Open it. Inside were documents dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out. Transfer of ownership, majority stake, primary beneficiary. I don't understand, Marcus whispered. I'm dying, William said simply. Pancreatic cancer. I have 6 months, maybe less. I don't want to spend them alone in a big house, counting money that means nothing. Last night, you showed me something I thought was extinct, real kindness, with no expectation of return. You gave up your time, your sleep, maybe even your job, to help a stranger. You didn't do it for money or recognition. You did it because it was right. William leaned forward. I want to give you my company, Marcus. Not all of it. I have obligations to my grandchildren, to certain charities. But 60% of it, controlling interest. I want you to run it, to build it back up, to use it to help people the way you helped me. Marcus couldn't breathe. Mr. Rothschild, I'm a mechanic. I don't know anything about running a company. You know about fixing things that are broken. About working hard. About integrity. William's eyes blazed with intensity. I've met 1,000 businessmen, Marcus. Most of them would have driven past me last night. Would have charged me double because they could. You didn't. That's worth more than any MBA. I have a daughter. A life. I can't just. You can bring her, Catherine interjected. In fact, we've already arranged a full scholarship for her to any university she chooses, separate from this agreement. Mr. Rothschild was quite insistent. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. Why me? William's face softened. Because 30 years ago, when I was starting out, broke and desperate, a stranger helped me. A man who had nothing gave me a place to sleep, a meal, and advice that changed my life. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I'd pay it forward. I've donated to charities, funded scholarships, but it never felt right. It felt like buying indulgences. But last night, standing in that rain, watching you work on my car when you were exhausted and worried and had every reason to say no, that felt right. You reminded me who I wanted to be. The lawyers spent hours explaining it all. There would be a transition period. Marcus would work alongside William for the next 6 months, learning the business. He'd have full control, but would be accountable to a board that included Catherine and 2 others. The company was smaller than it had been, but still substantial, database security software for hospitals and financial institutions, with room to grow. There's one condition, William said as Marcus prepared to leave, his head still spinning. You have to promise me something. Anything. Find your own stranger to help. When you see someone broken down by the side of the road, literally or figuratively, stop. Help them. Pass it forward. That's the only payment I want. Marcus couldn't speak. He could only nod. That night, he took Emma to dinner at a real restaurant, not the diner where she worked. He told her everything. She cried, laughed, and cried again. They talked until the restaurant closed, planning futures that had seemed impossible 24 hours before. Dad, Emma said as they walked to the truck, why did you stop to help him? You always tell me we can't afford to be late, can't afford mistakes. Marcus thought about it, because your mother used to say that kindness isn't something you do when you can afford it. It's something you do especially when you can't. She said that's when it matters most. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Marcus learned about business while teaching Emma to drive in a new used car. He sat in board meetings while making sure he still made it to her volleyball games. William became part of their family, having dinner at their apartment weekly, telling stories that made Emma laugh and teaching Marcus lessons that went beyond business. The real wealth, William told him one night as his health faded, isn't money. It's having someone who wants to hear about your day. It's knowing you mattered to someone. William died on a Tuesday morning in May, with Marcus and Emma at his bedside. His last words were, "Don't forget to stop." Emma graduated valedictorian. She gave a speech about kindness as currency, about her father stopping in the rain, about the ripples one good act can create. There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. 5 years later, Marcus ran Rothschild Solutions with Emma at his side, working summers and breaks from medical school. The company had tripled in size, not because Marcus was brilliant, though he proved surprisingly good at seeing what was broken and fixing it, but because he built a culture of helping. They offered scholarships, funded community programs, and paid their employees well enough that they could afford kindness too. And Marcus kept his promise. He stopped. For the single mother whose car broke down outside his office. For the teenager who needed a job. For the veteran who needed someone to listen. He stopped, again and again, and taught his employees to do the same. On the anniversary of William's death, Marcus stood in the rain outside that same garage where it all began. He placed flowers by the curb where William's Mercedes had died, and he remembered. Not just William, but all the people who had helped him along the way. The diner owner who'd let him eat free sometimes. The teacher who'd tutored Emma for nothing. The neighbor who'd watched her when Marcus worked late. Kindness wasn't rare, he realized. It was everywhere, in small acts and large, in strangers and friends. It was the currency that actually mattered, the only thing you could take with you and the only thing worth leaving behind. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Just helped someone change a tire. You'd be proud. Marcus smiled through his tears. I am, he texted back. Always have been. The rain fell soft and steady, washing the city clean, and Marcus Webb stood in it, remembering the night that changed everything. Not because a rich man had made him wealthy, but because he'd stopped when he could have. Kept driving. Because kindness had been more important than convenience. because helping someone had mattered more than protecting himself. That was the inheritance William had really given him. Not money, not a company, but the reminder that we're all one broken down car away from needing grace. And the understanding that who we are is defined not by what we have, but by whether we stop. He would keep stopping. He would keep teaching others to stop. And somewhere, he knew, William was smiling. The rain continued to fall, and Marcus turned toward home, toward Emma, toward a life built not on wealth but on the simple, revolutionary act of giving a damn about strangers. It was enough. It was everything.